Welcome back to the Which More podcast. I'm your host, Quinton Harris. You're dialed in for episode 226, and I got two guests with me today. My standing co-host, Lenny Curry. Thanks for joining us today.
Good to be back.
And we've got a new guest with us, Katie Wiles. Thanks for joining us today. We're great to have you on the show.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, so a little bit about Katie. You guys worked together in your administration when you were in office as the communications director from 21 to 23. Also daughter of Susie Wiles, who happens to be on the Trump administration right now as the chief of staff. Not just on the administration, but the chief of staff, right? So
Capital T, capital H,
that's
capital
right.
E.
Running it. So great to have you on the show today. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So Lenny, this was kind of your idea. You were like, hey, we've got to get Katie on the show because there's a lot to talk about. I mean, the timing is right. We're coming off one of the greatest landslide victories we've seen in political history. And, it's kind of interesting, the dynamics of things coming out of this. And I'm glad to have you on the show today to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I thought it would be fun for a number of reasons. Obviously, we'll talk policy and what just happened in the election, but also the Wiles family, they're here in Northeast Florida, in Jacksonville. And it'd just be cool for people to get to know them a little bit on the personal side.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. One of the things you talked about off air was like humanizing the actual person, your mom herself, is that,
Sure.
you think of this person that's a figurehead in Washington, like you're in Washington, you're footed in Washington, this is where you're going to be. But, your mom got a chance to come home for Thanksgiving, spend a little time with the family and be here here in Jacksonville, Palm Beach, Florida.
She did. And this is home. That's cool. That's the big takeaway here is my mom always said commute to work, not to fun. And so this has always been home. And so outside of the fact that she was the first female chief of staff for the White House, she was the first female chief of staff for the city of Jacksonville. So double glass ceiling break here.
Awesome.
But yeah, this is our home. I was born and raised here. My sister was born and raised here. My mom and dad moved here in 1980. So this has always been home, and she's a true sort of steward of this town and this community and the people here, not only just Jacksonville, but the greater Northeast Florida region. So it's cool.
That's really cool. I love that, that saying you just had about home and work. That's pretty.
Commute to work.
Yeah, commute to work.
Not to fun.
Not to fun. That's fantastic. So, a couple of things I always wondered, like, when as outwardly facing as your mom was, and obviously you travel, you don't just live in Jacksonville. Did you ever feel like there's any backlash for that or any type of anti-support being a part of, with your mom being the role that she was in with Trump? That's awesome.
Never. My grandparents were here when I was growing up. So my sister and I, we grew up in Ponte Vedra, born and raised, not Jacksonville, but literally Ponte Vedra, third house in Marsh Landing when there were peacocks and turkeys and four-wheelers. Before it is like...
Four-wheelers.
Yeah, we used to have a grand old time back in the swamp. So I'm surprised I have all of my extremities. I never was bitten by a snake. So small victories in sort of Northeast Florida childhood. But no, I always felt super supported. And my father was a lobbyist as well. And so while my mom was on the local side here during the Peyton and Delaney administrations, prior to that, she worked for Tilly Fowler, which is sort of a name and a blast from the past. They were always present. So whether it was the first flight out Sunday morning and the first flight back on Thursday between soccer and horseback riding and all of the extracurricular activities we had, they were super present. And I have an 8-year-old son, so I'm trying to sort of emulate that as well and to find that sort of balance where, he can be proud of his mom, but also I'm there for all the big moments.
That's fantastic. I'm sure he is. You definitely don't think of that. Like you don't think of that type of commuting back and forth to make it happen. You just kind of think, oh, they're just there doing their thing. But that's, obviously a commitment your mom's made and stayed true to that. And it's trickled down to you as how you're handling it as well there. So that's very cool. I love personally the fact of when we look at, like you said, your mom's all about Jacksonville, all about Ponte Vedra. And I think it's kind of also, we're already on the map, but I think with what's recently happened here, we're really on the map.
Absolutely.
Our
Big
city,
time.
and there's a lot of focus on what's going on. And correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of the members that are being appointed, they're Florida people coming on this administration. There's a lot of Florida in this administration right now.
They're Florida people, and not only are they just Florida people, Florida's a huge state.
Right.
But in our circle of politics, these are Florida people that we both know. Like, to see, like, it's on my phone. In the old days, we called it a Rolodex, right? It's not, right? I mean,
You're aging yourself,
right.
sir.
Yes.
Kind of getting the band back together up there.
And I'm not trying to, give Politico more than it deserves. But they had a headline a couple weeks ago that was sort of saying that Florida's the executive office staffing agency. And they're right. And so sort of the talent that's coming out of Florida is unbelievable. And lightning, I don't think will ever strike twice, with the way that not only sort of our region, but this state is sort of the epicenter of the talent, the policy, the change that's coming into D.C. It's been a long time coming. And so it's really exciting to see.
So I wondered about this, and I thought about before we came out here. How much of that do you credit to how well our state surged through COVID? How much do you credit to the fact that the mindset, the growth, like you could say the other states, and there was Florida, and we took a lot of heat, but boy, we came out looking really good. A lot of those individuals were part of that, including yourself. There was a huge rise of our economy and population growth because of the way we handled ourselves through that. Do you attribute a little bit of that to this administration coming together as well?
Well, I think our bench in Florida, Republican politics, has been deep for years because we've had such a strong party for so many years, and that's connected with good policy. So no one foresaw COVID coming, but Mike Waltz, Marco Rubio, Pam Bondi. I mean, these are all people that I've known, that we've known for many, many, many years, and were elected because in a state that has a good, strong Republican Party that stands for good policy, which we saw on full international display during COVID. Right. So that's the long answer to say yes to your question.
Yeah.
And then one of the things I think that's important is, even sort of post-COVID, this sort of strange new world that we're all living in, it didn't just stop. And so when you look at sort of RPOF during this cycle, they're political directors from here. So this sort of epicenter of talent that people are pulling from Northeast Florida has still, and I think will continue to remain extremely important. And sort of the policies that are coming out of, obviously, Mayor Curry's administration, but from Tallahassee as well, I think are sort of everlong. So it's not something that was sort of a flash in the pan. And I think the world, and especially sort of the country, saw sort of ways that we could be successful, but still sort of be free. I know that's a sort of a buzzword here, but I think it's really important to sort of see how you can thread the needle, and it's not an all or nothing, and the pendulum does not have to swing all the way to the right or all the way to the left. And we were really, really blessed with having leaders and decision makers that understood that there is a way forward that is not an extreme.
Yeah, couldn't have said that any better. And I think sometimes we're sheltered. We live in Florida, so my in-laws at the time lived in New Mexico. And they lived in Santa Fe. And so it was kind of desolate where they lived in the desert. But what was interesting was how isolated they became during COVID. And they couldn't even get vaccination shots. They had to drive to Colorado just to kind of offer a different percent because their state wouldn't allow it. And so it's just weird. That would never been a thing here in Florida. So now they live here, by the way.
Right.
Yeah. They moved here.
Of course they did.
That's right. They live here and they love it. So it's just kind of interesting how, to your point, we had great leaders, great forward thinking and great mindsets there. So I'm glad to see that develop like that as an administration.
Absolutely.
And going into what's going on into 2025. Speaking of going into 2025, what challenges do you foresee as this transition takes place in the first year of the administration under this pretense? I would say if I had to guess from an outsider looking in, agenda goes border control first, maybe figuring that out, and then tariffs, economy. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just what from a non-insider looking in, this is what it looks like here. Obviously, selling steel down at the border probably isn't a good idea, but
it's really good steel.
It's really good.
It's really tough. It's really heavy. So it's really good steel.
It's really good steel. We should sell it for $0.25 on the dollar. That'll make really good sense. But that being said, what do you kind of see? And that's to both of you. What do you kind of see as the first year kind of agenda?
Man, Katie, I think you grew up in understanding the swamp, national politics. You saw your family live it. So I think you'd have some I'll weigh in, but you'd have some pretty good insight about what they face.
I mean, what you just said is exactly right. And it's not something that's not like a novel concept. I mean, if you ask anybody what the top 3 issues were during the election, it was, I wouldn't even just say border control, immigration. So that's a lot of places. It's not just our southern border, it's also our northern border, and it's also understanding folks who are overstaying. And I agree. So sort of the delicate dance that we need to do with China as far as tariffs go, I don't think any of these are challenges. I think they're issues that the president and his team, I'd be an idiot if I said my mom wasn't prepared. She's prepared. There's nobody better. And he's picked a team that there's no team that knows the issues more and has been watching that understands sort of how to sort of navigate the challenges, navigate the conversations, understand what it looks like interacting with other sort of world leaders, and understanding how to get to a sort of place where it's America first, and that's what sort of Trump's message has always been. It's something that my mother and our family believe in. And so I think at the end of the day, whether it's immigration, whether it's tariffs, whether it's trade, public health, economy, AI, cybersecurity, national defense. The reality is this is a very, very clear referendum that we will put America first moving forward. And so that's not a challenge. It's the mission.
Yeah, it's an opportunity.
Right.
Right. I mean, and the people have spoken. It was by a landslide. That's what they're wanting to see.
Referendum.
Yeah, it's got to be.
But I think you said something key there about Susie Wiles, your mother, and that is prepared.
Yeah.
And, when the president came in last time, no one saw it coming, right? And they had to throw a team together. Well, not this time. I mean, he now has, as his chief of staff, the person that helped him the first time, but now led his campaign, was top of the campaign this time, and prepared politically and prepared from a policy perspective and ready to execute. And that's going to make all the difference in the world.
That's comforting. And, I would also ask, what do you think takeaways, right, just from your opinion, what do you think they take away from the first time in office to the second time in office?
Oh, wow. Well, the world is different.
Okay.
We're on the other side of
Sure.
the pandemic we just talked about. So it's a completely different animal. And we've got sort of conflicts in places that we didn't have conflicts before. And so understanding how to navigate the relationships with foreign leaders, but also understanding the very clear message from the American people that it is time to sort of come home and to make sure that we're good first. And so I think that's a huge difference. I think the other difference is, in 2016, I think there were a lot of figureheads. This is very much an administration that is made up of the people who've been with the president since the beginning, and understanding sort of what they believe, what he needs, and being able to navigate that sort of appropriately. It's not as much of a fly by night. This is a strategic and disciplined organization with a very, very clear understanding of what needs to happen next.
If you go back to approximately this time a year ago, it's very easy to forget, maybe a couple months, but coming just out of the summer into the fall, lines were drawn in the sand within the Republican Party pretty fast. The president was under attacks from the courts, the justice system. There was a lot of chaos that what I consider the big state was throwing at him. And there were many that did not think he could be reelected and that thought he was not only politically dead, but was facing a pretty bad future. Then there was a group that said, no, that's our guy. And they were right.
And I will say, sir, you were one of the first here in the state. It was not a popular thing to come out and sort of be effusive with your support for the president, and to understand that, yes, this is going to be a race, and yes, there's a lot of extremely talented people who are going to run, but Mayor Curry was one of the first people to sort of come out and sort of plant his flag and understand, this is our future, and this is the man, the only person who can fix it.
That's well said.
We really have a chance right now to
right the ship,
to talk about draining the swamp. I mean, this is the moment, and we saw just recently with the continuing resolution. Fine, it worked. We saw what Elon did, right?
Yep.
Did you see that?
I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
I saw the budget that was recently passed to prevent the government from shutting down, which I thought was a little obnoxious. But no, I haven't seen what Elon did. Yeah,
he put a tweet out, didn't he?
Sure. He did. So yesterday, actually, while Speaker Johnson was on Fox and Friends, he tweeted, "This bill shall not pass." I can't speak for policy again because I'm on your show,
right?
And it's not my wheelhouse. But what I will say is, what else was he going to say?
Right.
It's like he's there to sort of understand and be fiscally responsible about our money. Clearly, we can't have the government shutting down tomorrow at midnight. Like, it's not going to happen. But here we are, and it's a mess that the left has left us
with.
And so I'm excited for a new dawn.
Is the conversation like in the war room, just from maybe either one of your perspective, is there any talk about the national deficit? I was surprised that never came up during the election. I mean, I realized there was other topics that were hot.
Sure.
But, I felt like, this is kind of, I was looking at it, I was like, man, you kind of miss a Ross Perot at this point. Where you come up with the pie charts, talk about how to eliminate this down. Right. But from the standpoint of addressing the budget, right?
Sure.
Not the personality and the tonality. But is that ever been talked about, or not ever been talked about, but is that a topic of discussion?
I'm not privy to their war room. I imagine it was probably a conversation, but you're right. It wasn't sort of a front and center sort of campaign talking point, if you will. What I think that says is, as much as that is an important sort of issue and it's something that's on everybody's mind, it goes to show the state of the country and the state of the rest of the world that we're talking about our borders, that we're talking about national security. Not saying that the deficit isn't important, but man,
there's other issues pressing.
I'm glad he won, because we would be in a bad way.
Yeah. And so the reason I bring up the national deficit is because the interest payment on that is tied to the Fed funds rate. And so I often wonder, like, when they come in there, the easiest way to tackle that would be to lower the interest payment, which would mean lowering the Fed funds rate. But technically, they can't go in there and strong arm the Federal Reserve, right?
Correct.
Powell's made that abundantly clear, even though we know how that works. They're politically independent to a point. But I often wonder if that's a strategy, and obviously can't speak to that, but that's something that I look at as one of the reasons why I think the Federal Reserve in 25 will do more than what they're saying to offset that. It also stimulates the economy. There's a lot of other reasons.
Well, I think they've been cautious. I think during the Biden administration, there was so much that was up in the air between, the money we were sending to Ukraine or the ways that we were sort of spending outside of the U.S. I think the Federal Reserve was doing what they can to help us and to control a situation that we can't control. But I think there will be some more comfortability and transparency coming out of the executive office and understanding sort of how they work together to make it right. So I'm hopeful.
Yeah, do you see Powell and Trump working together?
I can't speak for
Fair enough. That's fair enough.
I think, though, in talking about the deficit, just in general,
he's the money guy. Ask him.
Well, I mean, you can tax your way out of it, or you can grow your way out of it.
I love that one.
Right? And I think there's so much low-hanging fruit, and we're going to see with President Trump and Elon Musk and Vivek and others. We talk about, when you say about cutting regulations, people immediately go to, oh, you're going to cut all the stuff that makes our food safe, that is good for the environment. There needs to be good regulations in place, right?
This is my favorite, Lenny. This is my favorite, Lenny. Keep going,
I love
sir.
it. Let's go. Keep going.
But people don't realize the amount of governmental agencies right now that don't answer to anybody, and this is what Elon and Vivek are going to look at.
CFPB being one of them.
That absolutely discourage people from going into business, businesses that could grow and grow our economy. Example, this whole thing of debanking. So whether you believe in cryptocurrency or not, it's legal. You should be able to start a business in it. You should be able to grow that business. The federal government has at times come after people through banks, right?
Absolutely.
Debank them, deplatformed them. That's one example. Get outside of crypto. There's probably many other industries. In fact, I know that there are many other industries where that happens. The government sees some business they don't like. It doesn't agree with their political ideology. Through that regulatory agency, they sick a business on them and they shut them down.
So it's not just even like discouraging. Even if you're a small business owner that can get past sort of the BS coming from the then they make it nearly impossible to succeed. So if you're able to sort of fight your way through the red tape, then you're drowning in it. And
regulation has hindered the growth of our society dating back to really the late 30s.
Sure.
I mean, after the dark collapse that happened, the terrible collapse in the 1930s, the regulation that came in after that has done nothing but hinder growth. Like, we have never seen growth like we saw prior to that. And that's because of regulation. And if you look at countries that don't have as much regulation, they're thriving right now. Matter of fact, we have businesses going over there because they're
Argentina.
thriving.
So I have an office in the firm I work for has an office in Argentina, and Milei in I think less than 16 months has been able to sort of bring them out of what was this doomsday scenario by strategically relaxing some of the regs. It doesn't mean everything goes away.
Great point.
But what it means is having somebody in charge, a commander in chief, that is able to look at specific sectors, specific sort of agencies' specific business interests and understand that it's a trickle-down effect, and it doesn't have to be this great watershed. So if we are able to do this at point A, then point B will benefit, and when point B gets to where we need them to be, then point C. So it's a very strategic approach that I do think Trump is uniquely qualified to be able to see, because he's a businessman. At the end of the day, my mom always said, never be the king, always be the kingmaker. And there's something so different about Trump that I think irks a lot of people. But I think if you can see it,
I see where this is
the
headed.
fact that he's a businessman.
First.
I want him doing my taxes. I probably need him as a real estate agent. I would also like him to be my CFP. And so this unique sort of set of skills that he brings may make him to the left this sort of bombastic, unqualified, reactive. No, he's me, and he's you, and he's you. And I think we need to sort of get around the fact that this career politician mentality has not done us any damn good.
Oh, well said. And for me, like, this is how I look at regulation.
Bravo.
Yeah, by the way, bravo. The way I look at regulation is that anytime I've experienced it at the banking level, they regulate for the consumer, but the consumer is the one that ends up losing.
Right.
The consumer never wins on that, because if you regulate an industry in one area, they're going to find a way to make money from that regulation in another area. And from the banking perspective, I mean, for us, when the CFPB stepped in and started doing what they were doing for the consumer, well, the consumer lost all the benefits they had. You used to get free checking. You don't get free checking anymore. You used to be able to get your checks paid for. You used to be able to go to
can you
ATMs
even find a
for free.
bank branch anymore? Or is
Good
it all
luck,
like,
right?
if you don't have internet service, you're broke.
Right.
But again, it's this stop telling me you see me, because you don't.
Right.
The past administration did not, could not, and refused to see me. And so I think that was the overarching theme here in this most recent election, is understanding that, you may not love him when he's on some sort of rant about something that may not be applicable to you, but at the end of the day, he's normal.
Yeah. Yeah,
and I'm normal.
Can identify.
And he's
with
also, back to what you said, I mean, that is a saying too, that be the kingmaker, not the king. Well, there is no kingmaker of Donald Trump.
Right.
That's
right.
Which is freedom.
Right.
And liberation.
Because before he was the king, he was the kingmaker. And we're never going to get a 2-for-1 discount ever again.
That's right.
If some of the stuff we're talking about on the podcast interests you, and you're like, hey, Q, I want to be a homeowner. I want to buy an investment property. I want strategies on how I can take advantage of the market. I have a solution for you. And that solution is Loan People, to where it's all about the people getting the loan and the people doing the loan. You guys know me by now. I've been doing this podcast for years, but I've been in the mortgage business for 23. And it's very rare you can find a company that has a mantra for loan officers, by loan officers. And what does that mean? That means you have a company that's designed to help provide the best atmosphere for loan officers possibly imagined. And not only that, the most efficient operations for those loan officers to be successful, which provides a better customer service. And that's what you get at Loan People. So much so that they put that in the company name. And at the heart of this is the people. It's in-house processing, it's underwriting, it's closing and funding. And why choose them? They got great rates. They close on time, and they have award-winning service. So check them out at loanpeoplejacks.com. That's loanpeoplejacks.com. This was my daughter's first election to vote in, by the way.
Cool.
And so I know we both shared that there. Went to the polls together with both our kids. He went, I mean, not together, but we both took our kids to the poll and did that. They did it as a family, matter of fact. And we talked about that. But for her generation and a lot of her friends that had turned 18, here was two of the most shocking things that jumped off the page of me. One, kids that didn't register because parents didn't bring it up to them. Like, I don't know how that happened. And then number two, the overwhelming support of that age group to Trump. It wasn't even close. Like, it wasn't even close. At that age, they had already recognized they were fed up with certain aspects between the ages of 14 and 18 as they went through that last 4 years.
Because they know what they're staring down with college,
100%.
first job, understanding tax credits, understanding the health insurance crisis, and also understanding the cost of living. And also, you know, at the end of the day, we're looking at sort of international sort of crises with conflicts, whether it's Russia and Ukraine, whether it's Israel and Gaza. If we think that our children aren't watching what's going on around us and seeing I wouldn't even just say lame duck president, but somebody asleep
They don't
at
respect
the wheel, It's a joke.
Yeah, they don't respect them.
And so you don't have to be well-versed on the interest rate or understanding sort of the value of a dollar or understanding, how to move forward with AI security or national security or complex manufacturing or resiliency projects. No, what they see is that they're embarrassed by their president.
A guy they see memes falling over.
Correct.
Over and over again.
It's not a meme. He fell over. Right, he fell over. We just made memes about it. He actually fell. And so, I think it's, and I also will give credit to the actual campaign. Sort of this campaign around the Trump Vance campaign had brilliant folks around them and teams. Understanding how to talk to the 70-year-old fixed income retiree and to the 19-year-old, my first election, I'm headed into college, I've got this much student debt, I want to be a doctor, but I also know that this is how much debt I'm going to incur going to medical school. What is the country going to look like when I graduate? And so being able to sort of thread that needle and navigate that and to understand why he is the candidate for all, Black, white, Latino, male, female, understanding how the future looks better with somebody, not just who's just awake, but somebody who also is a father, a businessman, a husband, who understands how the future looks to somebody who is just beginning, I think is huge.
Yeah, I think he's also super real from the standpoint that we've all had past, we've all had things we've regretted.
Sure.
And I mean, he owns it. He's not like, he doesn't try to hide from it. He owns it. And I think that kind of speaks to like the realness of it as well. It's like, yeah, okay, that happened, but it's not happening the way that you're describing it. But yeah, all right, let's move on. Who hasn't? If you've lived perfect free in this life, just I only know one person that did that. Tell me who else if you can find one, right? So
it's about to be Christmas.
Yeah, so to pass judgment or to cast doubt on someone because they've made the same mistakes that you've made, or know someone that has made, it's kind of incredible for people to be like so adamant about that. I feel like during the election, remember when people would like argue about an iPhone and an Android and why which one was better than the other? I feel like the opinions were so divided. That's where we were leading into this, and obviously Apple won in this one particular case. So that was the win there. But it's definitely a bright future for 2025.
It goes back to the fact that he's a human. I've worked for a lot of electeds, and I've worked for some really great ones and some really not so great ones. But the fact that, I can bring my child to a rally and this man still remembers his name is something that's really, really, really special. Obviously outside of Mayor Curry, nobody has been kinder to my son. And nobody's been sort of as present, which I think says a lot. So outside of this sort of persona on stage and this very, very strict, disciplined businessman and negotiator, he's a dad and he's a husband. And I think it's really important that people sort of are able to reflect back. And it goes back to what you're saying. Everybody's made mistakes in their lives. And as much as the federal government, as much as sort of some rogue prosecutors have tried to sort of bury him for all of this, whether it's financial, understanding that he doesn't have to do this. And he's choosing to do it, and he's not choosing to do it for himself. I mean, who the hell would subject themselves to this?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And
you can see it around, but you can see it around him too. Again, his kids love him, his grandkids love him. Life can be hard. Families can be messy.
You had a similar story. You said the same thing when you sit down with him. That he's engaged. He's in the moment with
fully present.
It's the first thing I tell people is, I remember when my mom, I guess 2015. I remember being like, I'm sorry, what are you doing? And she said, Katie, he's special. He's just special. And this is coming from a woman who worked for President Reagan when she was, when I was born, who was seen real statesmen and then seen the decline or the disappearance of true statesmen. And the president is extremely special.
I think I've told this story before. It's a fun, stunning. It speaks to the person. In the first campaign in 2015, I was in North Carolina with my family on vacation, and I was a new mayor. And there was Republican primaries happening, and they announced that Donald Trump at the time was coming in August to do a rally at the arena in Jacksonville. And I got a call, And I spoke to her mom. And my political team as well, because she was with President Trump then, representing Florida at the time. I said, I'm in the mountains. I can't get back for this rally. And they said, look, if you don't come to this rally, it doesn't matter that you're on vacation. The media is going to spin a narrative that you don't support this president, this nominee.
Could see that.
You're just not in.
Get in the car.
So I'm like, I said, okay. I said, Susie, I have one request. I'll do it anyway, but I have one request. I want to bring all the Molly and the kids were young at the time, and I just want them to meet him. It's like, see what we can do. So go on stage, do the thing. We're back in this room waiting, and he walks in. And I know I'm biased, and I think my kids are beautiful, but Donald Trump walked in, and he goes, oh, my God, they're beautiful children.
He calls Easton my mother's precious pearl.
Oh, wow.
So, because I have the only grandson. And so, but the mayor's right. Like, there's something really special that I don't think a lot of people get to see. And it's something that makes, it makes me optimistic, but it also makes me really, really happy because this team that he has around him now have been around the block, and they know that this is a moment in history where, the tourniquet doesn't always have to be pretty, but somebody has to stop the frickin' bleeding. And here we are.
I think it's super special that you have the insight, and Lenny, you have the insight to share this with the audience. Sure. I think it's something that they're not privy to. I'm not privy to. So hearing stuff like that, warms my heart, gets me excited. And, I think we talked about this, my son wants to meet President-elect Donald Trump.
Get your email.
He wants to. He was like, I just want to, he's like, and he's not even voting age yet. But he just thinks he thinks he's the coolest person.
You know what's cool about that?
That's awesome.
Within the last 10 years, it felt like kids had gotten to where they don't even care about who the president is anymore.
Right.
And we've now seen a shift back, right?
Huge shift.
And they're proud.
They're proud.
Right.
They're proud. My 8-year-old son is proud of me, of his grandmother. We call her Susu. So when I was pregnant, she was like, I will not be grandma. So she's Susu.
It is. When the attempted assassination happened, and when President-elect Donald Trump put his fist up and said, fight, my son looked at the TV and goes, badass. He's a badass dad. And I was like, wow.
You called me.
That's
I was actually...
Before it hit the news.
Yeah, I was actually...
Did it happen on live? I'm trying to remember.
It happened on live TV, but I was in Milwaukee getting ready for the convention. So I was hosting the diplomatic corps. I work for former Ambassador Trujillo, who was ambassador to the Office of American States. And so we were hosting some folks, and I wasn't watching TV. And I got a call from actually a candidate that I was working for saying, oh my gosh, are you okay? And I said, what? And I texted, and mom texted my sister and I, and one of the things that's really interesting is later that day I ran into Tucker Carlson, who said, you and your sister have the weirdest Guinness Book of World Records record ever. And I was like, what? And so my father was held hostage in Augusta National when he worked for President Reagan. And now my mother, and she was pregnant with me. My mother was pregnant with me during this time. And now my mother was here the next time there was an attempted assassination. So very sort of full circle, strange moment.
Wow.
But I guess what it would say is the Wileses don't work for, just anyone. I think we have to believe. And so whether it's my work for Mayor Curry or, my mom working for Rick Scott, helping champion, Ron DeSantis's first race, and then moving on to the Trump campaign. There's something special about the people we work for, and so willing to do it again.
Yeah, there's comfort in doing business with people that you know,
and also just willing to do it again.
Yeah,
it's special.
Well,
it's a special time.
He doesn't have to do it. He does it because he wants to, but your mom probably doesn't have to do it either. She does it because she wants to.
She wants to.
And that says a lot about the people on that staff as well. So. Just, I guess I first ask is thank you to your mom, and thank you for being on the show today.
Yeah.
And Lenny, thank you for bringing her on the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is awesome.
I'm glad we did this.
Some of the stuff you said, hair sticking up on my arm through the shirt, it's like chills. So it's super cool. And I just appreciate you bringing some insight and levity that we would never gather otherwise. So can't thank you enough for being on the show.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
Next time we'll talk pound cake.
Gosh, she makes the best pound.
Best pound cake? We'll have to bring that up next time.
Picture like a sour cream donut.
Uh-huh.
But a giant pound cake. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You know,
But a giant.
My sister and I don't eat it anymore because she would bake them like we would come home and there's like 7 on the counter. And so at this point, neither she or I eat them because I've had so much in my life. But that's my mom's thing is she's an excellent baker. I'm the cook. She's the baker.
Well, there you go. Good combination.
She'll be home this weekend to celebrate Christmas with us, so it's going to be special.
Congratulations. That's awesome. Well, thank you again for being on the show. As
Absolutely.
always, thank you so much for being a co-host. Guys, if you like what you're hearing, please share this podcast. If you would, 5-star review it. Check us out on our YouTube channel at What's Your One More with number 1. Obviously, we love your comments. We do read them all. We appreciate the feedback. Sometimes we address them on the show. The longer, the less we're going to do it. The shorter the comments, we'll get right after it. Guys, till the next episode, we'll see you at What's Your One More.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
I got one more shot, I'm gonna make it. One more chance, I'm gonna take it. I meant it when I said it, now it's time for me to do it. I got one life to live, so I put my all into